Welcome to the Wisconsin Wrestler Podcast with your co-hosts Teague and Steve Lurkwin.
Unmute. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Wisconsin Wrestler Podcast. I'm your host, Teague Fenwick, coming to you from Holmen. Joining me, as always, from Waterloo is my co-host, Steve Lurkwin. Steve, great to be here.
Hey, pumped to be here. Ready for a good show, Teague. It's going to be a good one here. Sorry, I got my phone's blowing up because we didn't go live right at 7, so people are a little bit upset with us, Teague.
Yeah, punctuality, not always our forte, but we're here, we're ready to rock. We got our guest on. And Steve, our guest is a fun one. I mean, we're starting the first of our 3 championship coaching conversations over these next few weeks. And a coach that we actually had on in the preseason. So we kind of, maybe he had some good Wisconsin Wrestler Podcast juju for him, or just had a really good team. There's also that case as well. But we'll still give him the proper introduction here, Steve. We got him on camera, so we'll get rolling with this. But I'm talking about he was a 2-time place winner when he wrestled at Luxemburg-Casco. He was a part of 2 team state titles as a wrestler. As a coach, he's been a part of 5 team state appearances, 4-time team state finalist, a 2-time champ now as a head coach. He's been coaching at Luxemburg-Casco for a total of 17 years. I'm talking about none other than Spartan head coach Chas Treml. Chas, glad to have you on again, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's great.
I know there's a lot of folks excited to have you on. It's our first live one with a coach too, so I'm sure we're going to get some questions along the way from people. Chas, given that it's our first time having you on as a state champion coach, we got a little bit longer of an episode to work with here, and we're not previewing 30 teams. Going to start off with one of our favorite questions. Let's hear about your wrestling story from when you first started wrestling, and we'll go all the way up to the start of this year.
Oh boy, all the way back to when it first started. I think I first started in 3rd grade. I had a couple friends in my class that were wrestling. My dad had wrestled, and I guess I was asking if I could wrestle. I didn't really realize what wrestling all entailed because I did watch the WWF on Saturday mornings. So
that's right.
That's what I was anticipating going in, and that was not what we got when we got there. And my dad told me about that that's not what wrestling is, and I guess 3rd grade was when he figured that I could handle it or could understand it and do well with it maybe. And kind of took off from there. I went to a couple tournaments, and after that I was kind of hooked for the most part. There's times where I tell kids all the time and parents that wrestling's not easy. I went through those same ups and downs through all the years that we were wrestling. 5th grade was a little rough. I think because of it, I was doing really well wrestling. It was just I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that. I had other friends that were doing other things and wasn't sure. And my dad said, "No, we're going to keep on doing this and push through." And after that, it was kind of hooked for a while. And then freshman year was one of those rough goes again. Got hurt. We had a really good team. We won team state that year. I was part of that. And if it wasn't for our current middle school coach, DJ Delabrew, I don't know if I would have been wrestling yet because he kept me out, and had a good talk with him. And ever since then, here we are. Went through high school, like you said, 2-time place winner. A little disappointed in myself that senior year for sure, but because I thought should have been doing a little bit better, but it is what it is. But that kept the fire burning, and wanted to go on to college. Went to lacrosse for a year, then transferred to UW Parkside. Probably should have just went there right away. I know I should have went there right away. I don't know why I wanted to go to lacrosse that freshman year. I really enjoyed the school and everything it had to offer, but ultimately UW Parkside was where I probably should have been, and that's where I ended up finishing up school. So moved back to the Green Bay area. One of my high school buddies, college buddies, Brad Shefchek, who's the head coach at Bayport. I don't think he was quite head coach yet, or maybe had just taken over at that point when I moved back, and asked if I wanted to come work with the youth program. So I went over there, started working with their youth program, started going to some youth tournaments, and lo and behold, I run into Coach Burso, and he's wondering why I was at the youth tournament. And I'm like, well, I'm coaching my kids. And he's like, what do you mean coaching your kids? I'm helping out at Bayport. And if you know Coach Burso, I got the eyebrow and the stern look at me, and no, you belong over at Luxembourg. So then next year I was at Bayport and Luxembourg, and then after that I was full transition into Luxembourg. He actually got me in for my student teaching here at Luxembourg, and my principal was still the principal at the time, so had some connections yet at the high school, and job ended up popping up, and started assistant coaching, and eventually head coach. So
Nice.
long story.
I gotta ask first. You said that your middle school coach was Coach Delabrew, a name. So obviously, my wrestling knowledge, anything pre 2008, I'm not familiar with. But a lot of folks in the wrestling world today probably familiar with the last name Delabrew. Are there any other Luxembourg names? And it's a common occurrence up there. Any other Luxembourg names that were coaches or guys you wrestled with who there's kids on the team now or have maybe graduated in the last few years?
Boy, there's probably a lot. That one's catching me off guard. Coaching with was Travis Spooty. So he was He was 2 years younger than me. So for me to work with him and Brian Jander, the current assistant coach yet, those guys were high school buddies that were on the same team, and we've been running it for a long time. Those guys actually were assistant coaching before I got here. So I didn't want to step on any toes either when I came, because I knew that what they were doing and how long they had been here, but they were more than happy to have me come out here. At least that's what they tell me. So, but yeah, so those guys, so between Spooty, Jandrin, Zellners, Delabrews, just trying to think off the top of my head right now, who would be coming right now. I'm sure there's more. Can't think. I know some of the kids that I started off coaching with already, they're starting to have kids come into the youth program. So that's interesting. So that's
Crazy
for a while. So
I gotta ask. So what year did you end up taking over for Burso?
His last year was 15, so the 15-16 season was my first year.
Okay.
Did you kind of know that you were going to be the one to take over that role, or how did that conversation go?
No, I did not know that by any means. Actually, that year I kind of stepped away, that 14-15 year, because I had some pretty young kids at the time, and that can, having a young family and having 2 kids, 3 kids eventually, that's quite a toll on the family, especially when you're gone out of town a lot. So I still kept in touch with those guys all the time, and I knew everybody yet on the team, obviously, but had to go through all the interview process. There's a couple coaches that were in on that process, so I had no clue what was going to come of that at that time. I guess I'm just the very luckiest of the guys that got to take it over and get this job. I know that for a fact. I am the luckiest one. So.
That's great. Long line of success, right? First, I don't know if there was a coach before Emo, but he was there forever, and then obviously Bob was there forever. But it had to be a lot of, stress, but a good stress. You're taking over for 2 legends, And
Yeah.
was there did you feel a lot of pressure on that side of it?
A little. Yeah, so actually, I'm only the fifth coach in program history.
Wow.
The first one was George Greger, and he started it 1924, I believe it was. So the
Wow.
2025 season is going to be 100 years for our program.
That's cool.
So he went 25 years, and then it was Frank Chalupa. He went 25 years. Then Emil Kuhn was the third one. He went 25 years. And then Coach Burso. So he did not go 25 years, but he went, I think he had 16 years as head coach, but I'd have to take a look when he started assistant coaching. I think it might have been 92, so probably over 25 years.
So you're still locked in for about 10 years then.
Take out here.
Well, I know we're going to get there, but with looking at what you guys have coming, I imagine there's no there's no urge to leave anytime soon. I wouldn't think.
No, that's for sure.
Well, Chaz, in your first few years of coaching, we'll get to this year, but I got to bring this up because in your second and third year, I think it would be then, you had a couple of fun duels in the team state championships. You and Ellsworth had 2 duels 2 years in a row. A 1-point duel the first year. The next year, I believe you guys won it 30-28. How was that? Is it different being a head coach in that situation than being an assistant coach? Or, like, I guess, how'd you feel your first time being the head coach and wrestling the team state finals?
I think going back to that question about the pressure, because that's the first time. Can they get it done? Now, we went there that first year, we take second. I mean, we're close. I think we could have won that one. Some things would have went a little bit differently. We could have won, but we didn't come back that second year, and we knew it was going to be close. We had a lot of different scenarios in which we could move guys around and see what we could do to get the best matchups. Even throughout that duel, we had to make some choices that, if we could change how we did that lineup, knowing after the fact, I think we would have definitely done. But in the heat of the moment, we had to do what we had talked about a little bit. And yeah, going from being the assistant coach, because it's not usually going to come back on them. It's going to be who's the main guy. So all those choices, decisions, if they turn out right, I think you said it in this year's during the duel. If you do the move, you're great. If not, you're not looking too hot for you. So definitely had that in the back of the head the whole time. So
I like the little foreshadow you got there, because we'll definitely be talking about that aforementioned move. Like, I just gotta say, even as an assistant coach or a head coach, you might have got a little sick of seeing the Ellsworth purple in the 2010s. I'm always interested, like, I want to do a blog or a podcast or something about not like best conference rivalries, but best postseason rivalries. And Luxemburg and Ellsworth being across the state from each other on the northern side. You guys wrestled each other, I believe it was 5 times at Team State in the 2010s. I mean, that has to be one of the best postseason rivalries of the 2010s. Did it get to a point with you guys where you just, had a certain level of respect for each other?
I think so. I would hope so. I talk to Mark every so often whenever I see them now, and pretty cordial, I think, and get along, and I can ask him questions. He can ask me stuff. So I definitely think it's mutual respect, and that's what it's all about. I mean, we know it's going to be a battle every time you go out there, especially those teams, because there were a lot of good individuals on those teams, and you could have probably wrestled some of those duels 10 times, and you're going to have a different outcome each time. So it was tough both ways.
Well, there was even one year where you two wrestled. It wasn't. It was basically the team state final in 2013, but that was before seeding. So you guys went at it in the semifinals. I think people forget how good that Ellsworth team was that year.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. That was, I believe, yeah. So that would have been Bardowski ended up wrestling state champ. He moved up. Bardowski was the runner-up, and he tried to throw him, and Bardowski put him on his back, and that was a big one of those moves where that was a big place for us, winning that match, and then that helped with the duel, obviously. But yeah, that was one of those memorable moments. I won't forget that one.
Well, Chaz, jumping forward from last decade to this year a little bit. So coming off of last year, you guys team state runner-ups to Amory. I guess you guys had a very good group last year. When did you realize that this year's group, or when did you think about the fact that they had the potential to be team state champions?
Realistically, and I think you could ask our kids even, that year of COVID, we thought we had the team that year even. So that's been on our minds since then. And I can say that because remember going back to COVID, we had more time, right? Because we couldn't do weekend tournaments. We only had our duel during the week. But I remember Flo came out with a series on Penn State. I don't know if you guys watched that or not, but Flo came out with the series on Penn State and how they kind of built how they got into their run of winning a bunch of championships in a row. And we watched that. And I told our guys, this is us. This is going to be us. I'm not kidding. This is us. And we watched that. And when they changed those rules for the sectionals individual sectional determining who's making it to team state, that really threw us for a little bit of a loop, because with our regional being comprised of Freedom and Wrightstown, and Two Rivers had some very good individuals. Yeah,
I think you had Denmark too, didn't you?
Denmark, yeah, because I think Denmark ended up taking third at the sectional that year even. So in the individual side, so it was like we knew we had the right team that could compete with Amory. We just didn't get that opportunity. And I know we even talked to, I think it was Coach Rogie even at state that year. He's like, dang, you guys had a nice team, but you probably should have been here. But that wasn't in the cards for us that year. So getting back there last year and proving that we belonged, and coming up just a little bit short there against Amory in the finals, it was what it was, and move on. So we knew we had the team. We had most of the core coming back. Had a couple more kids come back out that weren't out last year, so that gave me a lot more flexibility in the lineup. And I think as they gained confidence coming back into the wrestling season as it went, that really started putting things in perspective, I think, for not only myself, but I think the kids. And then towards the end of the year, the kids were the ones that put me a little bit more at ease going into team state than me putting them at ease. So.
Well, you think about that dynamic. Oh, sorry, Steve. You got it.
Yeah,
first.
No worries. Just looking back on that year, one team we forgot about as well. Brilliant was in that regional, and Matt let everybody know that there were 5 ranked teams in that one regional. So that was that might have been why you only had 5 or 6 sectional qualifiers.
Right. And it's hard. It was hard going in. I think Winneconne had a nice team that year, but they had 9 or 10 qualifiers, I think, at sectional. So just the sheer numbers, and then wrestling back to 5th, we just don't have that many guys. So it's going to be hard. And all of us coming out of that regional were like, dang, like we all beat each other up, and now we don't even have enough guys really that, I mean, you could compete, but it's going to be hard going against twice as many kids. So.
Yeah, and I mean, thinking about that dynamic, like you bring up how you have the guys that were fired up from that COVID year. So they were, juniors and seniors this year now. And then you have that mix of those guys with the big chip on their shoulder, and then you have a lot of talented underclassmen. It's just, that's like almost the perfect championship DNA that you have, is you probably have good leadership on that team. Because you can have a lot of talent on a team like you see with your underclassmen, but if that talent doesn't have the right direction, especially from their peers, then you see that talent not go anywhere sometimes.
Yep. How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them motivated for the team, for themselves? But those are dynamics that you can't count on all the time, because it has to be put in place consistent.
So going into this year, you guys start off with the Luxemburg-Casco Spartan duels, which it seems that's somehow getting tougher and tougher every year. But man, that was one of those, because I mean, Rapids and Bayport were there. I'm trying to think of a couple other teams there, but they have good teams. And it was one of those tournaments where I looked at the results after, and it's like, man, I knew Luxembourg was going to be good this year. I didn't know they were going to be like this good, because you guys, results-wise, just looking at the box score, it's like you guys almost made it look easy there.
Yeah, so the other teams were Port Washington and then Sheboygan Falls, which Bayport, Sheboygan Falls, Port Washington, they've been coming for quite a while now. Rapids was the new team in this year. They took Holman's spot because Jason needed a tournament last year, so we're definitely willing to have them come in. And so Rapids came in this year. I think Wisconsin Rapids and Bayport were both missing some kids that day, so that might have made the score look a little wider than maybe it would have been. But I don't know, as the season went on, they definitely got better. We definitely got better, and that tough competition to kick off the season definitely helps all of us involved, and got to see each other and keep track of it.
And then if I'm looking at track correctly, the next tournament you go to varsity-wise is the Minnesota Christmas tournament. When did you guys start going to that tournament again?
Let's see. That would have been 2019, I think. Because it was the year after we won Team State. Because prior to that, we were going to the Dvorak down in Illinois. But then I think they switched to Saturday, Sunday, that tournament. So then we wanted to go see Ellsworth, go visit them, and they're out in the Minnesota Christmas tournament. So that's why we went out there, and people kind of enjoy it. So we keep going out there right now.
Nice.
You missed Ellsworth a little bit. That's understandable after the decade that you two had. And then you guys ended up placing at 9th there. I'm just looking at some results right now. What's interesting about your guys' 9th place finish is it looks like the highest place finisher was 8th on your team, if I'm correct. I mean, that's a balanced team right there, if it says anything, finishing top 10 there with those placements. But was that kind of what you were expecting from the team, or were you expecting more from individuals, or what was your gauge on that tournament afterwards?
Well, that tournament we know is going to be tough going in. They changed the format. I feel like they changed the format of it each year just a little bit. And then on top of it, this year we went to a new venue. And we didn't know, I guess, maybe till the week before, that in that venue they had split into 2 gyms, basically. So it was kind of calling some of my dad coaches, and we split up, and because otherwise we weren't going to be able to cover everybody, as the tournament was going too fast. At some points it was run really well, it just was split up and couldn't be by everyone. So we knew it was going to be a tough tournament, but we're running around, we don't know exactly where we were at, or I wasn't paying attention. I was more paying attention to where's my next guy up and what mat and how's everybody doing. And it no longer was I think it was double elimination, but you kept I think you're guaranteed 5 matches this year. So those guys kept wrestling and wrestling and wrestling. So that was different from the past. If they got 2 losses, they were done for the tournament. So, when everything kind of shook out at the end and we got to the placing, it was like, wow, We got quite a few guys in the placing areas, and some of those matches where we could have placed higher at some of those weights. I mean, we're losing by a point or two overtime. It was neck and neck. I mean, all those top guys are that close in some of those weight classes. So we could see that we're going to be pretty competitive at all our weight classes, just about. So, especially on a big tournament like that. So that gave them, I think, a lot of confidence. Hey, I might not have done as well as I had hoped, but I did do pretty well when I look back at it and reflect on it. Because they don't know who some of these guys are. I don't know who some of these guys are, but you're going to get pretty tough competition out there, and that's all it is. Go get some good matches, figure out what worked well, what didn't, and adjust and move on.
And before we move on, for the folks listening, whether it's live or you're listening later on, when we talk about results here, Matt Verbaden adds some pretty important context that you guys wrestled most of the year without Ronsman in your lineup, which if you're missing a returning state champion, that'll probably hurt your point output a little bit. But to even think about that, like Matt reminded me of that, it goes to show how impressive the year you guys had was. So after the Christmas tournament, you kind of like Holman, you have the Christmas tournament bi-state gauntlet over the course of a couple of weeks. At bi-state, you finished 13th, and you guys have been going to bi-state for a while now. So
Yep.
what do you think about that tournament? What do you like about it that keeps bringing you back there?
Let's go back one quick. So before Minnesota, between Spartan Duels and Minnesota, we have Battle on the Bay at Bayport. So that's I think there's 32 teams. So that's a pretty large tournament too. So we're not talking a two weekend gauntlet of tournaments. We got Battle on the Bay, Minnesota, bi-state. So those guys are getting a lot of matches in right off the bat when they should be fresh, getting us to bi-state. So bi-state, we went the same reason we went out there. I'm trying to think. That would have been that might have been 2012 or 2011, because I remember being, for some reason I remember Schmerchek and
Johnson wrestled a match.
So I think that was the first year we were down there. So whatever year that was. So 2012 or 13. But again, that was go see our friends in Ellsworth, because we couldn't find them anywhere. So we went find them, and so we get some video and get some matches with them maybe ahead of time, and so that first time we see them is not just at state. So but yeah, bi-state, great tournament, 2-day tournament, great venue. Only thing is I wish it could go or get done earlier on Sunday for that long, or Saturday, so it's not such a long ride back, but can't really do too much about that because of the contracts. I talked to Jason about that already a couple of times. So but yeah, overall it's great. You're going to get a wide variety of wrestlers, different styles, and that's only going to make us better in the long run. Yeah, you might not win it, but you're going to get a lot of close matches again. Like I said, that just makes us better for down the road. As long as our kids understand that, and I think our records speak to that, they understand the philosophy at this point that we're going to go find the tough matches, do the best we can, learn from them. If you win them, great. If you lose, move on. Learn from them, move on, because it's going to help us when we come back into our own area.
Coach, how do you walk me through that? Because I've talked about that for the last couple of years. Like I've always said that Luxemburg-Casco coaches are not afraid to go out and find the losses. I mean, you're looking at your kids this year. There's 10 losses, 11 losses, and these guys are state place winners. How do you? And I think you kind of already covered it, because you said your kids, you talk to them about what their philosophy is, right? Your guys are going out so that they're battle tested at the end of the year. But how do you? You have some really good wrestlers. How do you handle the mental aspect of that with those kids? Because some of those kids aren't used to losing as much as they are.
Yeah.
How do you walk us through that dance?
I think now it's been a while. We've always gone to some tough tournaments. Even when I was in high school, we tried doing the same thing. I think that was when Oshkosh on the Wild first started. think that was maybe my freshman year, actually. I think was the first year, so like 93 or so. So we were going for those big tournaments. They used to go to Badger State before that, and I think that just kind of trickled on later on down the road because when Cheesehead popped up, I know Burso got him into that right away, and Kuhn. So I think that it doesn't take a whole lot for in our program. It doesn't take a whole lot of talking them into going to those tournaments. They want to go see how they do there. Some of these guys are used to going to maybe some big tournaments out of the state, or they've never done it. They want to go try it. So here's our chance. Hey, who cares if we go to Minnesota? We don't know any of these guys. They don't know us. Maybe our styles clash. Maybe our style's better for that day. Maybe not. Big deal. But we have to figure out if our style's not working, how do we modify that? How do we change that so that we can actually improve? So when we get back to Wisconsin, we get back to our regionals, sectionals, that state run, we can do some damage. And, that's just learning moments at this point. And I think they just understand that you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. That's what it comes down to at this point.
So we got to jump back here because I did miss over it on track, which is my bad. Luckily, Steve's from Wrightstown, so we're not going to lose a lot of our Northeast fan base, but we do got to talk about the battle on the Bay for a second. But you guys beat Bayport by 13, which it's always fun from a coaching perspective. How is it when your team's in a close team race like that? Like, do you ever catch yourself rooting for another team to like maybe beat a Bayport kid in that situation? I know Steve can even speak on that tournament because he did the finals for that one. So, Steve, if you want to hop in and talk about the team race at all, go for it. But how was that day getting a fun challenge in terms of trying to win that team trophy?
It was fun, Teague, and I'll just show this to Coach Chas, is that what impressed me about your it was fun calling the finals when you had to keep checking the team score because not a lot of big tournaments you get to do that. But what I was most impressed with is at 106 pounds, you guys had two guys in the semifinals wrestling to get in the finals. I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that's one of the tournaments where we could bring extra guys to wrestle, and I do have a pretty good backup 106 in Carson Bahoyak behind Jake Jandrin, and I knew Jake was going to be having a good season. He had a good season last year as well, but this just afforded Carson the opportunity, and he went out there and had himself a day too, and that ends up happening later in the year too when we get to that tournament. I'll talk about that, but yeah, that team race was tight. We didn't have I think we were missing a couple guys out of our lineup at that point. Bayport had closer to their actual lineup that day too. So that combination of things kind of made that race pretty tight. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I think it came down to, I think we clinched at 170 in the third place match was when you finally, I think, clinched it, that we had it. But yeah, that was an exciting day. That was a long day. That was a lot more matches than I was anticipating. They changed their format a little bit that day. Made sure we just had more matches overall, and it was good. So everybody was getting all those matches, and that's what it's there for, especially early in the season. So yeah, definitely a fun day.
Jumping back ahead here, you talk about that gauntlet, that 3 or 4 tournament gauntlet that you basically have to start the year. And in years past, I mean, you just look at the participating teams throughout the years. In years past, maybe the Duffy's a nice little tournament to go to after all that. And it seems like that the case is kind of changing for the Duffy now. A fun Friday night tournament, and it just seems there's tougher and tougher teams added to this one every year. You guys end up beating the runner-ups Baldwin Woodville. I think it's like 254 to 189 or something like that. But even looking at the team score, you guys had a commanding day, but looked like you guys still had a lot of good matches there.
Yeah, there's a ton of good matches. Angelo had told me that he had got, I forget what team ended up coming in. maybe it was Baldwin. That would have been because this was their second year. I was like, what are you doing? Why you keep adding all these tougher teams right now? So Baldwin's in there. Connell Falls came in this year, so they had some good individuals. But just maybe some of those teams didn't quite have full all-out lineups. But holy smokes, there's a lot of good individuals on those teams and smaller brackets. I think, and you're hitting some pretty good matchups right out the gates at the quarterfinals. And yeah, it was very competitive, a lot more competitive than I was anticipating. And when I originally signed up to go to it. So, but I think it's good. Kids like they love it being on a Friday night. And then the fact that you don't win a medal, you win a Duffy hat. I think that's what's really selling those kids right now. Cause they want that Duffy hat. So it ended up being a really good night for us overall. We had quite a few champs, especially, I forget how many we had in the finals all the way through right away. But yeah, that was a pretty exciting night overall.
Moving ahead to the Northeastern Conference Championships, I'd say the big duel from that one, a lot of people are looking forward to you guys versus Freedom, where I think, Steve and I had it pegged as a potential team sectional final matchup. And you guys beat Freedom 47-29. And knowing what you know about the teams in your sectional, that's probably something you're thinking too as a coach potentially, is that, okay, we could see them in the postseason as well. What were some takeaways from that duel that you had with Freedom?
Well, we had a duel with Wrightstown right before that. So, and Freedom was wrestling Denmark, I think, before that. So we had some tough matchups with Wrightstown that I wasn't sure how some of those matchups were going to go because we hadn't seen them in a while. They had also just come off of wrestling Prairie, I think, a couple weeks before. So I was kind of watching. I wanted to know how our matchups were going to be with Wrightstown, how our guys do with their guys, so I could compare them to possibly how they did with Prairie. Then out of the corner of my eye, I'm watching how Denmark and Freedom duel is going, and that was kind of neck and neck too. So I was like, that first match there even was pretty exciting. Then when we got into the duel with Freedom, we just know it's going to be one of those type duels that it's going to be tough regardless. And same thing. We didn't have Ronsman yet. We have our lineup. It is what it is. Let's go see how this is going to shake out. And our guys, I think we won the flip for that one. And that set us up pretty good overall. And we went on a run right out the gates. They didn't have anybody at 106, and then we got pinned, and then we got another pin, and the pins just kept coming. And that was a pretty fun night, exciting night, because I think that really brought the team together that night. Clinching the conference, having some good duels that night, knowing that, yes, we beat Freedom, but knowing that Freedom was probably going to change their lineup, not how I anticipated when they got to team sectional, but I knew that was probably not going to be the same lineup when we would possibly face them again.
And you guys close out your regular season, man. I mean, do you guys have an easy tournament on your schedule at this point? Close out the regular season with the Pulaski invite, where you guys took second to Kaukauna with 198.5 points. I think Kaukauna, the only in-state team, well, aside from bi-state as well, the only in-state team to beat you in tournaments throughout the year. They scored 275.5 points. I believe, talking to Coach Genrick, you guys are one of the longer running teams at the Pulaski invite. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I mean, it's nice to have a tournament that's pretty close to home. That's so tough, just like the Battle on the Bay. But what were your takeaways then going into the postseason after that tournament? Did you guys feel like you were ready for the postseason after that?
Oh yeah, that Pulaski tournament, that's a tournament. It's always tough, always has been. And for our guys, it's a good litmus test as we go into the state tournament series. You know it's going to be tough, but I think that tournament, just when you think maybe it'll be a little bit easier this year, nope, come back. Guys are shuffling already and going at it, and you got tough quarterfinals matches, prelims even sometimes. That's depending on the weight class. Um, so same thing. You could some of those guys. You have your cream of the crop guys at some of those weights, but some of those other places at weight classes, you could shake it up, and you're going to pull somebody different that might be the third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Some of those weight classes were 7, 8 deep. So it was pretty tough. We're pretty happy to come out of there with a second place finish. I think guys were getting down to weight. That was the first tournament they're down to their weight class that they were going to compete at. So see how they could adjust to that and how they felt and if they did things right to get down and go from there. So then they had 2 weeks. We had 2 weeks before regionals and make sure we're healthy and clean things up and ready to go.
We'll now get into the postseason, Chaz. At regionals, I mean, I'm still befuddled looking at this score. The top two teams make their, I mean, hey, you were on the sectional preview when we talked about this one. Probably one of the tougher, if not the toughest super regional in the state. Denmark is second with 198 points. You guys win it with 294. I mean, was that a performance at regionals that day? I mean, your confidence had to be almost at a season high going into team sectionals on Tuesday. But was that a performance from you guys that even you were expecting as the coach?
Point-wise, I guess I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention to that. But how our guys performed and where they placed, I think for the most part, yes. Some guys, they were so close to making it out of there too. But, kind of like we were talking with the Duffy, I think that was a tournament where you had a lot of teams, but you had some really, really good individuals. And then that kind of happened at that super regional. There were some really, really good individuals on some teams that I didn't really know a whole lot about. And that was interesting when you came into that super regional. And then you go into the sectional, it's like, holy cow, we were pretty deep at our regional. So yeah, they wrestled really, really well, but we also learned that there's some really good individuals out there that are gonna make some noise, and they ended up doing that at state.
And then at team sectionals, your first round matchup against Seymour, you guys win 59-18, but I think Seymour, one of the teams you'll like to see make it to that next level of the postseason, just because there's a lot of tough teams that make it to team sectionals out of your regional, and to see the Seymour team that had so many guys coming back. They, I think one of us picked O'Connell Falls, Steve, to make it, or both of us might have, to be honest.
Maybe.
But to see Seymour make it was a good showing by them. What do you have to say about Seymour's program or the state of their program right now?
Yeah, we haven't seen them dual-wise. We haven't wrestled them, and I don't think since I took over, because we used to be in the Bay Conference with them, so we used to see them quite a bit, and then we haven't seen them a whole lot aside from Pulaski tournament. But yeah, they have a nice squad, some good young guys that are coming up. So they had a couple really good seniors. So they look like the team that, after they looked at results from the regionals, was like, okay, I can see why they made it out for sure. And I think we're kind of keeping an eye on team scores that day as well, as the day went. And I know they were creeping on Freedom a little bit for a while, until probably that last round where Freedom kind of pulled away. But that just kind of speaks to their kind of depth of the team, that they were going to be a tough out. So we had to make sure we're going to be ready that day. And they did. They had some really good matches throughout the duel. So.
Well, I was going to say, Ezra and Kale Leesgang helped get you amped for the team sectional. They were the very first match, and they went to ultimate tiebreaker. So,
yep. That was like polar opposites of styles, I think, and that was a good first match for sure. Ezra short and strong, and Leesgang tall and long, and both different type of techniques, and that's where those styles kind of talked about earlier clash. So if you're not ready for that type of match, you got to figure out how you're going to be able to change it on the fly and modify your approach, because otherwise you're going to end up with the loss. So that was a good way to get us started, because we needed that match to get us going after that point.
And then in the finals, you guys have a rematch against Freedom. You beat them. It was 44-20. Yeah, 44-21. I would say I even said this on the post-team sectional podcast. For the score of that duel, I don't, and you can agree, probably doesn't tell the whole story of how intense all those matches were. And I think it just shows how ready you guys were in this moment, or for this moment. Because there's a lot of good matches in there that maybe could have swung another way or made the score look closer, but it just seems like you guys pulled through on all fronts.
Yeah, those guys, we know going into Freedom is not fun for anybody. We know the crowd's going to be there, but I think our crowd showed up that night, and I think that gave our team an extra boost for sure, because I don't know if you saw the pictures, I posted them after, but I think we had probably half the gym was full of our fans almost for that duel, for that team sectional duel. So they came out in full force and they're backing us, which was awesome. And I sent the thank you message out to them, because that definitely helped. Yeah, those guys just wrestled their hearts out that night. I'm trying to think. Yeah, we started with the upper weights, made the turn, and he had tough matches. 120, Barbu. That was a rematch from the conference duel, and Reset caught Peter and pinned him at the conference duel, and we knew Peter would probably be ready for that this time. So, and he was, and Reese did a really good job of making sure he didn't give up team points, and that was the name of the game all throughout that. And Freedom guys were the same thing. Don't give up the bonus points, and back and forth like that all the way throughout those matches. And then you had Delabrew with Vandehei. That was a good match, a bloody match, I remember. And it was a good back and forth. And then Ronsman getting the match. You had Brockman versus Ruthio. I mean, you can just keep on going. And then you get to Shoots and more. And that was the one move that I didn't see coming, where Moore was going to drop down from 82. I thought about them moving guys up, but not moving a guy back down. I wasn't sure how they were going to do that, and that was the difference. They moved Moore down. So Sam was ready to wrestle Moore and hit a big throw and caught him, and that was a huge moment. That kind of ended the momentum, and that was kind of it for the duel at that point. Like you said, that duel was a lot closer than what the points were at the end. I definitely would agree with that. But finished it out strong and the way it should be, and on our side, and that was it on the team state for him.
Nice.
I just got to say, what's so impressive about Barbu, like going into the lineup, is folks look at the regional results on Track Wrestling. Barbu's not a starter in the regional lineup per se. I think it just goes to show how good you are at getting those guys ready who might not be the full-time starters per se, but I mean, you have a couple of those guys. Even Blahowiak's a guy at 106 or 113 that I'm sure a lot of teams would love to have, and he's someone that you could plug into lineups against certain teams. And how do you get guys like that? I mean, obviously Barbu had the match before where he got the pin over Tomajevic, but how do you get those guys who maybe aren't full-time varsity yet to just get them in the right mindset for those big moments?
I think the biggest thing is that everybody buys into the team aspect. We're doing this for the team, and know what your role is. What is your role? It might change from dual meet to dual meet. It may change from week to week. Never know when somebody's going to get hurt, and we had that happen again this year. Make sure you're practicing hard. Make sure you're continuing to improve. And I think with Reese, that was I told him that all season. especially after the conference duel, because that match, everybody knows that Reese would do a certain thing. And at that point, with Peter, Reese just started actually wrestling, and then that helped set up his go-to stuff. And he just kept evolving as a wrestler, and he's becoming more well-rounded as a wrestler at all three levels, whether it's on his feet, on the mat, or on the bottom. He's a tough go now. So just seeing him continue to develop, and Carson's the same way. Those guys understand that we have a tough lineup, or a really tough lineup in the bottom. They're making each other better, and they know that the ultimate goal for the team is team state. How do we do that? You may be part of it, you might not be. We have other guys that have come in and out. Even team sectional or 220 was out after regionals. He had some stuff on his hand that wasn't going to get cleared. So Kelvin Bohm goes in on the fly. He knew it was going to be a tough go, but he had a major jump from last year to this year. And he's just trying to keep points off the board. Did it in the Seymour match. Loudon Tank did the same thing. We could shuffle the lineup, put him in so that we could try and save some team points or gain some the other way. So I think those guys understand. I think a lot of them have seen it from previous seasons. This isn't something new that we just started. Hey, this is what we do. We're going to look for those matchups. Middle school level, we might shuffle guys around. Now with the youth state coming into play, we might start seeing that. So the kids, that's not going to surprise them. They're ready. We might put different people in all the time. So it's just getting them used to that situation. So when we do have that, like we have at team sectionals, at team state, everybody's good. They know what's expected. Now the flip side of it is it's the hardest part as a coach and as a wrestler, that if you can't crack that lineup, what is that motivation going to be yet? And I can tell you that our kids, that they've been very good about it. And yes, they're disappointed that they're not in the lineup come regional time and get their chance to make a run at state, but they know that they're still in it as a major cog in that team state run.
Before we talk about team state stuff, we got a couple more weekends of individual wrestling here to talk about. Real quick on sectionals, because you guys send 8 qualifiers through to state out of the 11 or 12, I believe, that you sent to sectionals. You had one guy finish 4th there, so seems pretty fair to say that you guys performed the way you wanted to at sectionals for the most part. And it's what you see some teams where they do wrestle better on the team side of things. They'll do well at team sectionals or team state, and they might not do as well at individual sectionals or individual state. Is that like a program thing, or is that maybe an individual basis with guys where you can get them to get up, like you try to get them to get up more motivation wise, I guess, for the individual aspect? I just remember our team, we made it to team state, but we only had 3 guys make it to state, because it's like, after we made team sectionals, that was everyone's big goal. So it's almost like we shut down at individual sectionals on Saturday. But how do you get your guys up for the individual portion of the end of the season?
I think coming into regionals, we have our schedule set up, how we're going to practice, what our practice schedule is. That Wednesday after team sectionals is more of a refocus type day. Take a look at who our opponents are, make sure we break down video if we have some video, who are potential matchups, what we need to have. So I think that part helps for sure in terms of how do we get ready for that weekend. And then the second part of it is probably this year was, I'm going to say, obviously a little bit easier to do this, but it's kind of like a dual meet format for us, because we had those guys 106 all the way up through 195 just about all right in a row. So it's kind of like a dual meet. It's us against them mentality. And those guys, you see the first guy go out, all right, he did his job, the next guy go out, and it just kind of keeps rolling like that. And everybody's cheering on the side. It's kind of that same dual meet mentality. and we kind of go through that when we're out at Minnesota by state. It's especially Minnesota because it's only usually the parents and then our teammates. So who's going to cheer us on? You better be cheering on your buddies because they're going to need you, especially that. So we take that same philosophy from there. Make sure you're cheering your buddies on. Go get out of the gym for a while when you can. Make sure you come back, cheer those guys on, and because they need you. That's what you're there for. You're there to help out. Make sure they meet their goals yet as best they can, and we've been fortunate that that's been happening a lot lately.
My favorite part about that answer about you bringing the dual meet aspect into it is I was on the call with Newton Smirchek for a few rounds at individual state. And I asked him too, because when I think of Luxemburg-Casco wrestling, one wrestler that always comes to mind for me is Reese Warachek, who was like the best 1 point ultimate tiebreaker wrestler ever. And, you even see guys like, if you see on paper, you have guys that, maybe most teams in that situation, it's guys who might get majored or they give up, bonus points, whether it be in an individual tournament or not. But with Luxembourg guys, whether it be Warachek, who won a lot of matches by 1 point or in overtime, you have guys who aren't favored on paper that just keep stuff close. And it's just crazy. You talk about 5 coaches over the course of 100 years where you've baked that dual meet culture and just wrestling your best and keeping matches close. It's like baked into Luxemburg-Casco wrestling DNA, and it's just so impressive to see that.
Yeah, for sure. That's like I said, that this isn't something that started with me. This was, I don't know who it started with. If it was with Gregor or if it was with Chalupa or Emo, but I know they started the team state format with Emo, and that was part of some of those teams early on that were fortunate to make it to team state. And I look back on those days, and that was we're all about the team and our individual accolades that'll come with it as long as you focus on the team. That's kind of just been the way it's been, I guess. You don't have to even tell us that much. Like in practice, that's the expectation. We drill that in middle school and youth, and make our practice partners better. And harder we practice, and the better we do, it's because we got good partners, and we want to see everybody do well, and that carries over in those tournaments and the duels at that point.
Moving on to individual states. So you have 8 qualifiers, and there's a lot we could talk about here, Coach, because you end up with 7 place winners out of the 8 that wrestled at the Kohl Center. So you don't, even if you go weight by weight, you don't need to talk about all the guys, but just what are some performances or matches or moments that stood out to you at the individual state tournament?
Of my guys, I guess you just gotta hang your hat on that. Those guys came to compete. Some of those, there's so many times guys are just happy to get to state, and it shows. They just get to state, and then they lay an egg, but they don't have the performance that they're capable of. And I could probably say that about all of those guys, just about that they were out there to wrestle, they were out there to place, and they were out there to do as best they possibly could. Some of them might have been a little bit tight during certain matches, but as the match went on, got back to what they did, and their placing. I was happy for Jake Janner and getting down there, and not just getting down there, placing. Michael Bostwick didn't come out last year, placed at state. Blakely, he wrestled an unreal tournament. He said that in their banquet the other day. Like, he was just so sound. Defensively, I guess, that it was tough to score on him. He stayed in really good position and wrestled a really good match in the semis even. Didn't win that one, obviously, but he came back and he placed third. Up and down there, it was kind of impressive to see. Yeah, Easton making it back to the finals, which was very happy for him to do that and get another shot at Heiser after he got knocked out by him last year in the semis. Caleb Delabrew. You talk about the team mentality. He gets kind of tweaks his ankle after I think it was after his he lost to Koenig and then he beat Bruning from Lodi and tweaked his ankle, and he had done that early and actually before season, right before wrestling started, and he's just like, I don't think it's good. Like, I don't want to risk hurting it more if that means I'm not going to be able to wrestle at team state. So we have a conversation with him and dad and mom, and I'm like, I'm leaving that up to you. I'm not gonna. If you want to wrestle, it's up to you. If you want to shut it down, he had made it to the placing rounds already, so he was going to place no matter what. So he injury defaults out, knowing that he's not going to get the place maybe as high as he had hoped, but he still placed, which is next step better than last year. So that's a pretty big sacrifice when you look back on it, and I don't know how many kids would look at that and do that. Then you got Max Ronsman, kid's out all year, broken ankle from football. For him to just even come back to wrestle, much less compete at that high a level, make it all the way back to the state finals, comes up short, against Vandehei, but Vandehei was pretty darn good this year, and Max didn't have as much wrestling in this year, so you can't ask too much more there. Let's see it. 82.
Last
Trace.
point, Trace.
Trace.
I was so happy for him. He had a heck of a. So we run into Matthias in the regional finals, sectional finals, and then we get him in the state semifinals and regional finals. That was they're both very, very close matches. Regional finals, it was so hot in the Denmark gym, they're sliding off each other. So it was like whoever was gonna get it must had to really work hard for that win. The sectional final, Trace was pretty sick that night before, to the point where I didn't know if he was even going to wrestle that at sectionals, and it was more of a do whatever you got to do to make it out of here, and we'll worry about state next week. But let's just do what you got to do to get out. That's whatever it takes. And so he did. It's not like he gets out of position very much, but so he wasn't the best of circumstances, and he gets Matthias in the semis, and it's tough beating the guy 3 times, especially when you're wrestling that tight of matches. So it was very cool for him to hit some offense at the end of the first period and come back and beat Max, because he's a pretty darn good freshman, and we knew he was going to be coming into the season. So extremely happy for Trace to get in the finals there.
I'd say
Coach,
a couple of my favorite. You go first, Steve.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I was just going to say, you talked about Easton Warwick, and I think the year he won state, I believe that was the COVID year, right? And Adam's friendship, if I'm remembering right. And I don't want to say his junior year or next year was a disappointment, because obviously he still placed, but I think probably for his standards it was a disappointment. But what I just noticed about him, I got to watch him wrestle live several times this year, and he just seemed like he was kind of on a revenge tour. Like, I'm showing people that who I am, and I was really impressed with his style of wrestling this year. He seemed to raise his game, and just the intensity level he brought. So just something as an outside observer that I noticed about Easton Warwick this year.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. There was one time he let up, but that was on the bay a little bit, and we had a quick conversation. I'm like, we know you're very aggressive. Just let it go with it, because you're so much better when you just keep attacking. Just make sure you keep attacking. And he did that. He might have let up once at Minnesota. Other than that, he was, like you said, it was kind of a revenge tour, and he was on the ball, on the mark most every single time he's out there. And duels, He was going to go get that pin. Whatever it was going to take, he was going to try and make sure he got that pin. That was a big guy that we relied on, and kind of linchpin in that bottom part of the lineup for sure.
I'd say a couple of guys. Some of my favorite stories from the year with those state results is Jake Jandrin. Folks who listen to us all the time, they're like, well, glad this is the last time T can bring this up. But Jandrin placing third at regionals last year, and then coming and placing at state this year. That's just crazy to think about. Well, he probably had a chip on his shoulder from all of last year. I know he had two really good guys above him last year as well. He was talented last year, but you see guys who, I mean, a big reason coaches want their guys to get as far as they can is so they can experience a certain level of that state series. And sometimes you see good wrestlers make it to sectionals for the first time or make it to state for the first time, and they don't perform as well because there's jitters sometimes. But for Jandrin to go from not even qualifying for sectionals to placing at state, that was just absolutely awesome to see. And then Blakely Bastion, I just remember last year, I think he caught my eye right away when he beat Campbell from Holman. And he was one of those freshmen where, again, I'm just a guy that, looks at a lot of box scores, so there might be a different tale to this, but you notice like, oh, this is a talented kid, but then you see some matches where it's like, oh, I don't know how he lost that one, or I don't know how that match was as close as it was. And as a freshman, sometimes you can be talented as all get up, but you're still figuring things out to some extent. And this year, just to see him really break through, and then if you can place third at state, I mean, there's people that argue that in some cases it's almost more impressive than finishing second. It was just awesome to see this talented kid figure things out on all ends and end up placing third. So those were a couple of individuals. I mean, obviously all of these guys have great stories, and for them to get to where they were is awesome, but those two are names that kind of stuck out to me when looking at the state results.
Yeah, for sure. All these guys, they spend a lot of time in the off season. It's not stuff that I'm doing. It's what they're doing, and they deserve all these accolades and all these awards that they're getting. And they're very well deserving. Everything they put in, it's because of the effort and time that they put in, not stuff that I'm doing for them. It's not, I don't have this magic water, unfortunately, or magic wand that I can wave over them, and it's them. It's their hard work. Their character of these guys is unbelievable up and down the lineup. Not just these guys that qualified and placed at state. It's all of them. This is an extremely tight group of guys that like to work hard, and they have big goals, so they're meeting them.
So, Coach, last but not least here for tournament talk, going to talk about Team State. And first round, you guys got Evansville, and you beat Evansville 63-9. The one thing I respect with Evansville is that talking to Coach Kent Weiler the week before, he was still talking about figuring out a game plan to where they could win a duel. And, like, for them, you could see the way that they wrestled, that they were coming in trying to win the duel. They didn't just make it to Team State and lay down. You could tell, like, there was a lot of good matches there where they were wrestling tough, and that was awesome to see that. And I think that's good for you guys, too, especially since you make it to the finals, to have some good matches going into that second round. But I could tell that you guys really came to wrestle. There was a couple of matches, and I think you know one of them that I'll bring up. But, I mean, early on in the duel, Caleb getting that win over Tucker Peterson. Peterson's a good wrestler, and Caleb beat him 10-4. That was a match right away where I was on the commentary. I'm like, wow, like that's a match where maybe I picked Peterson on paper, but is it Salentine?
Salentine, yeah.
Salentine, close. That was awesome to see. That kind of was an early, a foreboding that you guys were going to be firing on all cylinders. But let's talk about state championship part 2 here. I mean, you could see it with Easton's reaction near the end of the match and after the match. It almost felt like that was another state title match for him right there. And that was absolutely awesome. Not only for him to get that win and just to see how well he wrestled, but to see you guys all knew how much it meant to him too. That was just a huge match.
Yeah, I talked to him about it already at individual state. Kind of had a feeling that we might get Evansville back, and he was obviously down on himself right after the finals. But I told him, I'm like, you're going to get another shot at him if you want it. That's up to you, because we can move our lineup around however we need to, and we felt comfortable with that. And I think he kind of realized maybe he's not happy at that point on Saturday night. But as we come back to school the following week for practice and we're discussing it, I ask him, and he's like, whatever you want, doesn't matter. So he was ready regardless. We knew what our game plan is. He had a full week to game plan specifically for him at that point. In the state tournament, you got a couple of guys you got a game plan for. Or this one, he had one big one right out the gates that he knew he had to be ready. And that was awesome. Crowd knew it. Teammates knew it. We're all there, and he just performed the way that we knew Easton could. And it's just unfortunate it wasn't the week before, but it was better to enjoy it with all our fans down there this time as well. So happy as could be for him for that, because not many people get a rematch like that, and especially at state finals, to do it at team state. So kind of put that to rest a little bit. I know if that happened with me, that I'd have that hanging on me a little bit, and always wondering. Now he doesn't have to wonder anymore. He knows he could do it.
Well, also, too, I know we're centered around Luxembourg talk here, but good on Evansville as well and Heiser for going out there. And that could be an easy match to say, like, hey, I'm not going to wrestle this one. Like, you're risking a loss when you do it, but for him to go out there and wrestle as well, it shows that the kid's a gamer. So, I mean, props to both of them for making that match happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's typically going to be their stopper if there's a run going, and depending on their duels. And that was kind of that match that kind of they win. Who knows how some of those other matches after that go, but I think that was a big one. Easton wins that. They see their big guy go down, and that kind of changes the momentum of that duel at that point as well for them. So you don't know what's going to happen. Never know.
Then last event we'll be talking about here, Coach, the team state finals. And we got to ask you, too, because, I mean, there's plenty of years where there's good teams, and you could predict a team state champion maybe even at the end of, like, the previous year. But for there to be a team state finals matchup that folks are looking forward to for so long, first of all, so many things to happen where it can't happen, but it just seemed, even when Steve and I were talking about the team state recap from last year, we didn't predict it, but just the thought of you guys and Prairie du Chien seemed to be on a collision course all year, and it finally came to fruition. I have to ask you first, how long was Prairie du Chien on your radar as a potential team state matchup?
Last year.
Okay. I guess, yeah.
They were at team state too, and Winneconne, them, and Amory, and we're breaking down their lineup too. We don't know if maybe they could have potentially beat Amory, and if we beat Winneconne, maybe we meet in the finals last year, because that ended up being a pretty close duel actually. Theirs might have been a little bit closer than ours with Amory by a point or two. So we knew they were very capable of being down there. So it was just one of those things where I kind of kept an eye on it and not get ahead of myself too much, but we knew we were going to be at Bi-State, see how they do there, see how they do against some of our similar opponents. Wrightstown ends up wrestling them in that quad, so you could see how they kind of matched up there. And now you got me really thinking about it, because then it's like, all right, maybe this is really going to happen, but we still got to get past certain teams yet. But yeah, they're definitely tough up and down that lineup. And them not having Sechka all year, similar to us not having Ronsman, and then he comes back for team state. we saw him down at individual state. Was he going to wrestle, or is it just kind of a ploy? That was some good gamemanship. So that think about some more stuff. So so that was good, but we had to be prepared if he was or wasn't going to wrestle, and how that changes their lineup and what they do and what we could maybe do to hit matchups. So yeah, they're definitely. I probably knew their lineup. By the time we got to team state, I probably knew their lineup about as well as what I knew mine. Without being in their wrestling room.
That's fair. We can run through this duel. I'll just go match by match. We can break down when we need to. But I just got to say, starting off, Salentine not giving up a pin to Theory right away. I mean, I consider that a win for you guys. Did you guys feel a little wind in your sails after that first match? I mean, even though it was a tech fall, I think anything other than a pin there against Theory is a win.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And then, when he was up by 14 and we had a stalling against us, myself and the other coaches were a little bit into the match, and Ronsman's standing behind us, and he's like, stay down. And as soon as he said that, it was like, yeah, stay down, stall and get the point and give up the tech. So it was Ronsman that's where some of these guys, they're that aware. They're mad IQ, dual IQ. It's there. And we're lucky to have kids like that on our team. Because we've had a couple of them the last couple of years. Hunter Jr. was like that too last year. But yeah, you have somebody like that. And if you see it watching the video, because a couple of us have watched the recap, the matches again, and hear you recap everything, and you can see us in the background telling them to stay down, and and I don't think the ref wanted to call it, but kind of had to call it at that point. Wasn't wrestling freestyle, so.
I forgot that's how that match ended up there. For a second I was like, wait, what's happening? But then I realized, I'm like, oh, he just saved himself a team point right there. So that was awesome. And running right through, there's a few more pins after that. You guys are up 12-11. 120 and 126 were interesting. So Isaac won at 5-4. Blakely won, ended up winning at 7-2. Those were two matches where you guys are favored on paper. Those are probably ones that you maybe don't have locked in as wins. And I think it just goes to show Prairie du Chien came to wrestle, because those were tough matches. How are you feeling after the wins at 120 and 126?
That was 120 was a roller coaster match, because Isaac was kind of handling it pretty good the whole match, and then all of a sudden, then he gives up a takedown right with I don't remember, like 30 seconds left, and he comes back up, hits a reversal right at the end to get the win at 5-4, and it was like that was a huge turn in that match. Like I was expecting him to win. We knew it was going to be a very close match, because Hurd stays in really good position. He wrestles really tough, especially for a freshman, and he's wrestled some of those guys at state very tough. So we knew that was not going to be a gimme match by any means. But I mean, Isaac kind of hits that. I don't know. He hits some kind of weird roll out of there and comes out on top, and he gets a little bit of a funky finish to that and caps it off and gets the win. And then Blakely, he just stayed in position again. He's tough to wrestle. I mean, he's a little bit funky of a wrestler himself, but he just stays in such good position. It's hard to score on him, and he just keeps on going. So he's wrestled him before. I think back in it's very odd. I don't know if you knew this or not, but these guys all wrestled each other to a certain extent. The teams wrestled each other at middle school's team state.
Oh, no.
The current juniors were 8th graders. So we had some of those matchups already as well. So it was very interesting to go back to that duel and see how they did against them and see how they might do against them again. So, so those were some interesting matchups there.
So you guys are up after the first 7 duels. At the midway point, it's 22-11. And I have so many questions for this, but I'll try to maybe explain some of your thought process, and you can go through the rest here. But obviously, and I tried to predict where a potential lineup bump for you guys would happen. I think I said it'd happen at 6 or 20. But the one thing I didn't think about, because the one thing with Prairie du Chien versus you guys specifically is you guys had advantages at a lot of the lower weights, but just like you talk about with Evansville, they had the potential run breaker, very confident run breaker in Rhett Koenig at 138. So when you're thinking lineup moves, he's probably the first guy that you're thinking of. And I just want to, I guess it's a two-part question is, how long were you thinking of that specific move? But then also more interesting is, when did you decide that you were going to execute that move? Because I was thinking bumping Warchek up against Koenig because I saw the Delabrew result. I was like, well, they save bonus points against a guy who usually gets bonus points for PDC, or maybe they even steal a win there. But when did you finally make the decision to throw in Lawton against him and bump your guys up at 45 and 52?
Well, I kind of thought about it already back against that quad where he had some matchups with Wrightstown, because it's similar matchups. So when I'm looking at that, we had already wrestled bi-state, so I saw how some of those guys wrestled. So I saw how some of those guys matched up on paper and live, how we may have done against them. Then I saw how Wrightstown did in some of the matchups. Then when we got down to team state, we had a couple scenarios. I forget how many different spreadsheets we actually had. But we had different things where we had laid out if certain people were in the lineup, if they were out for them, if we win the toss, if we don't win the toss. So we kind of went through all those scenarios with the team already on that Monday leading up to team state, because Monday we actually had a snow day, so we couldn't even practice. So before they left, I told them to watch some video on certain things, and when I mentioned it to Max and Caleb that we might bump them up and Lawton would go in, and they all kind of looked at me like I was crazy, and I looked back at them like, what do you mean? Like, I didn't think that, like, they've gone up throughout the entire year. And then we had a good team conversation at that point. And then, like, if you don't think that's a good thing, then you make sure to let me know, watch some video, let me know. And came in the next day, those guys, I explained the reasoning as to what I saw. And because, like I said before, these guys have a pretty high mat IQ and wrestling IQ. They're not just going to say yes necessarily. They're not going to go against what I want them to do, but they want to know if you can explain why and what the situations are and why it might work. I think after explaining that to them, they saw where I was coming from, and they explained where they were thinking. And then we had a really, really good conversation. I think that's one of the best things that I can do with them, is make sure to include them in on things and not just, yeah, we're doing this. So when we had that conversation, I mean, I think that set them up. They were confident in what we were going to do, and that we won the flip. So they all knew exactly how our lineup was going to go, and away we went. And just happened that it worked as well along the way.
Yeah, Coach, I mean, I just got to say, with regards to that move, before we get on to the last third of the duel, I just think that shows the embodiment of you guys as a team this year, and just you as a coach and having faith in your kids, because that's a situation. The wins at 20 and 26 were big, but the duel's still not over at that point, and that's one of those, like you talk about, if you make that move and if one or both of them happen to lose matches against those bigger guys and you guys end up losing the duel, like you said, it falls back on you. But for you to show those guys and for them to know that you have faith in them to make that move up and execute the plan is absolutely, I mean, even Lawton making it to the second period, I think that got everyone pumped up going against Rhett. For those two to go up and execute it and win those matches, and I think the duel was basically almost in place after that. But it's like just the momentum you guys had, and I think everyone knew the gravitas of that move, and then seeing everything go according to plan was kind of like that X Factor key moment for you guys in this duel.
Yeah, because there was nothing flashy in those matches, right? That was just straight up the position, came out on top on those moves, and in both those matches, there's nothing flashy. That was like watching college, and then that got us to 160. And Ruthio, who takes fourth, like you said before, we had the one guy that takes fourth at sectionals. That's Ruthio. He loses to the guy that takes third and fourth at state at the weight class. Prairie Kid takes Avery takes fifth, I believe. This was redemption for Ryan, and he wrestled possibly his best match of the season. And he wrestled so well with so much heart when the team's on the line, and he let it all fly right from that first whistle, because he was on Avery's leg as soon as that whistle shot, and that woke everybody up that he's coming to wrestle today, and he's not gonna be an easy out. And he came, and he after that first probably 30 seconds, I thought he was actually going to turn him, even because he had a good crossface looking for a cradle and couldn't quite lock it up. But boy, he was aggressive the whole time. If he finishes some of those takedowns in bounds, it might have been an even wider margin of victory. It ended up being a very close match points wise, but Ryan wrestled a heck of a match, and that just kept that momentum going after Caleb and Max, and it was awesome.
Well, and kind of the beauty of that match too is you guys, and I think it's one of those, we talk about matches where mathematically the duel might not be over, but I mean, you know, being coaches and guys that look at duels ahead of time, you kind of know what's to come. And I think you guys kind of knew how the duel was going to turn up after that. I think Ryan knew, because I could be wrong. You could tell me if I'm spreading fake news here. I thought he put up a 1-3 at the end. I'm like, oh, it's their 13th team state title. I was like, oh, that makes sense. He basically clinched the duel there. But he might not have. But I think after that match, you guys basically had the duel in hand. I mean, you just had to take care of business after that. But the beauty of that match is you guys look at your team this year, and there's so many underclassmen that everyone knows about, and they're the guys that get a lot of the points and have a lot of the accolades. And then for a senior that just missed out on state, who's a part of a class that's looking for their first state title still, to basically get the match clinching, the dual clinching match to win your guys' first team state title in 5 years. That's the stuff that I love about this sport, man. Like that's just that's a moment that I hope Ryan and you guys can cherish forever.
Oh, absolutely. That sent my hairs were standing on my arms after that match, because that, like you said, that mathematically you know that it's still possible, but I mean, we really didn't think we were going to get pinned 3 straight times at the end. At that point, that kind of had it clinched, and he was a big reason why, not taking out a state place winner, and he was on, and that was like, I hope that was redemption for himself, and it was a great moment for him. I didn't see after, but he, like, immediately he came off the mat, and him and his dad were hugging, and somebody got that picture, and we went over that and talked a little bit about it in the banquet that we had on Sunday. So it was, I know that meant a lot to that whole family as well. I was pretty special overall. It was awesome.
And Coach, you guys close out the duel. Sheikha gets a win at 170 over Sam. He wins 13-9 there, which just knowing Sheikha, talking to him a little bit, I love to see that he got to wrestle one more tournament. He got to do it at Team State with the guys he's been there with the last 4 years. And then Trace clinches the duel at 182 with the win, and then Ezra even closes out with a win over a state place winner in Brewer at 195, which is, at that point, it's just the cherry on top. But I think that also accentuates how much this duel and that moment meant to you guys. But Coach, I got to ask you, you said the hair stood up on your arms after the 160 match. How did you feel when it was all said and done? I mean, just explain what was going through your head.
Probably the biggest thing was relief. Go back to what you had asked at the very beginning, a little bit of pressure. And I hope the kids never feel that pressure. I never try to put that pressure on them, but I mean, I feel it. If I feel it, I mean, if I know that they kind of feel it sometimes, right? But I don't know. It was just different, a little bit of a relief, but just happy. And you could see, I'm glad that I'm happy that when I go back and watch the duel on track with your commentary, that the camera actually was pointed towards us across the mat, and then you could see our fans up in the back. And that to me is like seeing them cheering and seeing all that stuff, because I can't see that right away when I'm coaching, and I don't hear a lot of the stuff going on behind me. I'm too locked in, and surprisingly sometimes, but I think that just knowing how much they're enjoying it, how much that the kids wanted it, they met their goal, the community's there supporting that, to me is just, that's what makes this so much fun, and you want to come back and see it. And those are just moments that I personally look back, and then having my family there, my wife and 3 daughters, and having them there, and they get to see that, and they don't get to a whole lot of duels. They got a lot of basketball going on, so my wife's driving them around. So for them to be part of that, I know that's a big weekend for them. They enjoy coming down with the team and hanging out, and but just being there and hanging out is awesome, because you get to share that with somebody else. But it's one of those times where, and I kind of said it the other day, and I don't know why it happened, but I just started realizing that I need to make sure I do take things in while I'm at some of these duels. The Freedom Duel, I think, was where I really realized it. Make sure I take a look at the fans and realize how special that we really have of a situation here at Luxembourg, and did it at state, and I talked about it at the banquet, and even some of my coaches messaged me and they're like, yeah, you're right. You got to make sure we take those things in and remember them. And because those are things that might not always happen. So when you get those, you want to hold on to them, because quite frankly, we wish we would have been back sooner than 5 years to be a team state champ, but you never know what's going to happen. I said that night, and so take it in when you get it, because you don't know when those chances are. And when you get that chance, you better make sure you put everything into it that you possibly can and have no regrets, and never want any regrets.
So, Coach, for this year's team, I'll give my little spiel on it, and then I'll let you close out with your thoughts on this year's team. We'll do a little talking about next year as well. But I just always think of, and I talked about it on the podcast and commentary a little bit, so I keep receipts, so I'll bring it up now. But I remember talking about the Freedom Duel, and I think I said it might have been the worst case scenario for Freedom in terms of what the point score ended up being. And I think there was a lot of close matches with the Prairie du Chien duel as well. And I think I said on the commentary, like, you wrestle this duel 10 times and Prairie du Chien grabs a couple of those matches, maybe even enough to win it 90% of the time if they wrestle just an infinite amount of times against each other. And it was one of those deals where, it seems like anti-Luxembourg talk when I'm talking from the perspective of those teams where it's their worst case scenario. But on the flip side of it, it just means your guys wrestled to the best of their ability every time throughout the year, especially against Freedom and Prairie du Chien. Those are teams that people can't scoff at when they're looking back at the history of this year. And for you guys to do what you did to those teams, to wrestle to the best of your ability and get those results where people might look at a box score and see that it's not close, but you guys had to grind out those victories. You earned them. And it just kind of goes to show, whether it be the seniors with a chip on their shoulder or underclassmen looking to prove themselves to the program or the community, it just really goes to show how this team came together. And you were really talented, but you needed a lot more outside of that to win it. And it culminated in a state title. So there's not enough good things I can say about your team this year, Coach. But if you got if this was the last time you could talk about this year's team, what would your reflection be on it?
I think just how confident they actually were, that they believed in themselves, they believed in the team, they believed in what their coaching staff was doing, and they went out and did it. Like I said, that excuse me, that Tuesday we came back from individual state when I had rolled out stuff on Monday, and they were kind of like, I don't know if I want to do that, if that's a good idea or not. But then come Tuesday by end of practice, I'm having individual conversations, and they're like, oh, yeah, we got this. We're doing this. No problem. Like, by the end of practice, I was like, oh, this is a total different mindset. They're confident. And that took the edge off for me, and I could actually enjoy the rest of the week preparation a little bit. And like I said, I could actually take in some of the things going on down at Team State and really enjoy it. And they took a lot of pressure off. They're that talented that I could enjoy it and make moves, and they're just a great overall team. Can't say enough good things about them. Up and down that lineup, parents, community, it's everything you want and then some. It's really like that.
Awesome. We could almost end right there. That's good stuff, Coach. I guess. And wrapping up this season, congratulations on the Team State title. And I think I might know the answer for this one, considering you showed your guys the Penn State documentary. But what's the outlook for next year?
Hey, before you answer that, Chas, too, how long? I'm just trying to think of your brain here. How long did you let yourself enjoy this one before your mind already started thinking about next year?
I'm still enjoying this year. So we went from high school Team State to middle school and youth Team State the next day. And I don't know if you heard about that, but our middle school won it for the fourth year in a row. And then our youth team were runners up for the second year in a row. So everybody's kind of on cloud nine a little bit right now. We put a lot of work in throughout all levels, and so everybody's happy about this year, and they're all excited about what the potential could be as we keep on going here. And we're looking at next year a little bit, but we gotta make sure we take the time to properly enjoy this year and take it in. Yeah.
And then last big question for you, and Steve, I don't know if you have trivia lined up or not, but since it's you could maybe dig something up quick while Chas has an answer here. But
I got something.
The last big question for you, first time we have you on post-state championship, so we want to just ask if you could go back in time, whether it be 17 years or even when you first started, if you could go back in time and talk to first-year head coach Chas Treml, what advice would you give him? And this would be like if you could hypothetically give advice to coaches who are just starting out, whether it be assistants, head coach, whatever. What advice would you want to give to young coaches, or in this situation, young Chas Treml?
Make sure you have a good circle of people that you can trust, that you can bend their ear, you can take criticism from, that some confidants that you can talk to about things, because I think I've always had that, and I'm lucky that way, because it's sometimes you might feel like you're out on your own, but you're not. You got to talk with some of those people, and that's probably the biggest thing, and have some mentors. I have very good mentors. I always can call coaches that I know, hey, I don't know if you've been through this situation or not, but hey, what do you think about this? This is what's kind of going on. Like, have you ever dealt with that? that's probably the two big things. Have somebody that you can talk to, and make sure you have a mentor. And I think I said that at a conference or something before, previously, that having a mentor is big, because if you don't have that person, even if it's something as simple as I don't know how to use track, because I feel like I'm on track more than what I am coaching the team sometimes. That's a big deal, because that's just having people that you can rely on outside, and working with them. So I usually takes some of the pressure off, because when sometimes you feel like you got to do everything, even if you delegate, you still got to go back and look at stuff. So if you have a mentor and ask how they're maybe doing stuff at their program, or that would be the things I would repeat to myself.
Good stuff, man. Steve, if you don't have trivia, I got a question for you.
No, for me, don't ask me trivia questions. I got two for you. I just came up with these here. I don't know how I'm going to ask this next, the second one. So I got one. Ready? Teague, this is a softball question for you, a little Boston trivia. Chas Treml, when his senior year, going into state, he's 34-1. First round, he wrestles a guy from Boston, and he beats him.
What year was this again? Sorry.
1996? No, 7. You were, 1997. 1997. Now it's got to be up on the wall, because this guy he went on and took 6. So his name would be on Boston's wrestling wall, Teague.
I know. I'm trying to. I almost had that thing memorized in high school. Is it a Chambers?
Nope. It's a town in Michigan.
A town in Michigan. Hey, Lansing, Detroit, Flint.
Flint, yes, Flint, Tucky. Andy Flint. All right, the second one here, I don't know how I'm going to ask this one. So, all right, this is going to be a tough one. All right, so Caleb Delabrew and Chas Treml wrestled. This could be father and son here, I'm guessing. They wrestled a guy from the same town, and they might have been father and son. They just have the same last name. Name the town. Caleb won this match in the blood round, and Chas wrestled this guy in the
first round.
Oh, junior year first round. Yep.
And it is father-son, right? Because I asked about it.
You did? Okay. Yep, father-son combo.
Okay.
It's a town. I'll give you a hint. It's a town. It always seems like these two towns match up with each other at individual state. A lot of big matches historically.
Oh man. Well, I want to think like Lodi right away, but
I'll give it to you. That's Lodi. Now that's the easy one. Tell the last name.
All right, Lodi at 138. Oh man, it's not. I don't know why my mind's escaping me on this one. It was at state this year.
State this year, Coach. That time has run out. Give it to him.
Bruning.
Breinig. Oh, okay.
Owen is the son. Oh, I forgot the dad's name here now.
Landon.
Yeah.
Chas wouldn't forget. Yeah.
yeah, he's got the bracket memorized, so nice.
Well,
yeah,
that was just one I happened to ask about, because I had saw the last name and I talked to Cody about it. So, because I was curious myself. So, yeah,
nice.
Steve, I got
so
some
you and Cody do speak with all the Lodi Luxembourg battles going on. You guys actually talk to each other.
I talk.
What do you got? Yeah, he's a good guy. Teague, what do you got? I mean, now keep in mind here, I like I said, I don't even remember what my birthday is, so.
Here, okay, I won't say anything. I won't preface with anything. When's the last time Luxemburg-Casco beat a team from Sectional C in Division II in the team state finals? And what team was it?
Sectional C, Division II in the finals. Well, Sectional C is the Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it'd be this year. They beat Prairie du Chien.
Well, before Prairie du Chien.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right. Oh, man, Teague. Let's see here. Could it be? No, it can't be GET because that would they switched back and forth. When's the last time? I don't even know.
I'll give you a hint. It was 10 years ago.
I can't even think of teams from down there now, man. I'm told. Give me a map. Give me a
2013.
Oh, that'd be Mauston. Mauston. Yes, there you go, man.
All right. Well, yeah, that's the answer. I always
should have started that off with, I'm going to give you some Mauston trivia. Then I would have got it right away.
All right, sorry to take the focus away from you there for a little bit, Chaz. It's a heavy episode, so I always like to loosen up a little bit at the end there. But, Chaz, we want to thank you for coming on, man. Just talking to you for the sectional preview and then just keeping in touch throughout the year. Pretty clear to figure out that you're a really good guy, and just you always like to see good people have success. And to see what you did with your program this year. I mean, yeah, you're a good guy. You give us wrestling merch.
Man.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I was never so excited.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and just taking, I mean, it's almost 2 hours just for taking your time to talk about the season and the program this year. These are some of my favorite episodes to listen back to because it's like a little time capsule for the state championship teams.
Yeah, this is great. I appreciate you guys having me on here and all the work and time that you guys put in, and it's awesome. I know a lot of people go back and listen. Even if they listen to it the one time, they'll go back and listen again, just like watching matches. It's fun listening to different perspectives and how things are going in different areas of the state, and just promoting wrestling in general. That's what we got to keep doing, and you guys are a huge part of that we can keep doing things like this. So I'm just happy to be part of it, and hopefully it helps and keep Luxembourg on our radar for everybody.
I don't think they'll be falling off our radar ever. I should probably quit picking against you guys, but yeah. Right. Thank you again for. Yeah, I guess you don't mind the bulletin board material. That's true.
Right. Yeah, I got to tell you, I don't know who it was, Chaz, but I had a fan, and I think he was joking, but he had a little bit of intensity on his face, and he stuck his finger at me like this, and he went, "Don't stop picking against us," or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but I'm like, I was kind of smiling, looking like, like I think he's joking.
Did he have the sign? Did you see
Did he have the what?
The sign at Team State?
I don't remember. It was I was trying to get up in the booth because I was late, and so I was I don't remember totally.
Yes, I think it was Joe Delabrew had a nice little podium that he drew on a poster how you guys picked against us, and then he had our Q up on top of the podium because he had picked us from the beginning.
Oh my gosh, can you send us a picture of that, please?
Yeah, send us, that'd be great.
Yep, so that was great.
Good stuff, man. That's why we do this. It's always fun to.
We'll have to post that on our social media accounts.
Oh, 100%. Well, thank you for coming on again, Chaz. In terms of the podcast, next week we are going to have our second four-timer on, Mr. Rhett Koenig of Prairie du Chien. Him and Coach Mike Rogie will be on to talk about Rhett's wrestling career and what he's going to be doing in the future. And then we'll have another state champ coach on after that. We'll just keep the rotation going. And next thing you know, it'll be June, and we'll find other guests to have on. But next week, first things first, we're going to have Rhett and Mike on to talk about the four-timer from PDC. Thanks once again to Chaz for coming on. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, whether it be live or you're listening later. We appreciate it as always. We got some fun off-season stuff planned as well, but until next time, we will catch you on the flip side.